The sharp tear of fabric cut through the ballroom. Camille smiled, holding the torn sleeve, oblivious that the server she just humiliated was secretly a billionaire's wife. At exactly 9:17 p.m., the most powerful man in the ballroom was standing beside a marble fountain with red wine dripping from his face. Nobody knew who he was. Nobody knew that the decision he was about to make would erase a billion-dollar business deal before midnight. And almost nobody noticed the young hotel employee standing beside him, holding a handful of white napkins and looking more embarrassed than the men who had just been humiliated. The ballroom of the Imperial Crown Hotel glittered beneath enormous crystal chandeliers. Executives laughed. Investors raised champagne glasses. Cameras flashed toward the stage. Tonight was supposed to be Richard Cross's greatest achievement. His company, Cross Meridian Industries, was preparing to announce a massive strategic partnership with Vale Dominion Group. The deal was worth more than $1.4 billion. Richard believed the contract was already his. His son Adrian stood nearby, smiling confidently at reporters. And then there was Ethan Vale. Quiet. Unnoticed. Standing near the edge of the room in a simple charcoal suit. Richard looked at him and saw a nobody. He had no idea he was looking directly at the men whose signature controlled the entire deal. Ethan had come for one reason. Not to inspect the company's profits. Not to admire its offices. He had come to observe its people. Because Ethan had learned something during 20 years in business. A company's financial statements could hide mistakes. Its employees could not, and tonight, Cross Meridian was about to reveal everything. Nobody at the Meridian Crown knew why Elena had chosen to work that evening. To the guests, she was simply another temporary server hired for an expensive charity event. But Elena had made that choice deliberately. 3 years earlier, she had married Adrian Cole, the founder of Cole Dynamics, a technology empire valued in the billions. Yet Elena hated the way wealth changed people's behavior. Whenever people discovered her husband's identity, their voices became softer. Their smiles became wider. Their mistakes became easier to forgive. She wanted to know who people were when they thought nobody important was watching. So twice a month, Elena quietly volunteered at charities, shelters, hospitals, and community events. She never used her husband's name. She never wore expensive jewelry. And she never told anyone that the simple gold badge on her uniform was hiding a wedding ring tucked safely beneath her collar. That night, however, she wasn't expecting humiliation. She was expecting to serve dinner, help raise money for children's education, and go home. But one small accident changed everything. A server carrying champagne had stumbled. A glass tipped. A few drops landed near Camille's expensive handbag. Elena immediately stepped forward. "I'll take care of it." Camille looked at the bag. Then at Elena. Then at the uniform. Her expression changed. "You?" Elena nodded. "Yes, ma'am." Camille laughed. And that was when the trouble began. Camille slowly picked up her handbag. "You spilled champagne on this." "I'm very sorry," Elena replied. "Do you know what this costs?" "No." "That answer tells me everything." Elena remained calm. "I can have the hotel's restoration team clean it immediately." Camille stepped closer. "You people always think an apology fixes everything." Elena looked at her. "What do you mean by you people?" Camille smiled. "Servers. Staff. People who spend their entire lives standing behind people like us." A few guests exchanged uncomfortable glances. Julian Cross heard every word. He should have stopped her. Instead, he looked away. Camille noticed. That gave her confidence. She pointed at Elena's uniform. "Look at you. Cheap shirt. Cheap shoes. Probably a cheap life." Elena's face tightened for just a moment. But she didn't insult her back. She simply said, "A person's value isn't determined by what they're wearing." Camille laughed. "That sounds like something poor people tell themselves." The words landed harder than the champagne. Elena took a breath. Then she quietly stepped backward. "Your handbag will be taken care of." Camille wasn't finished. She reached forward. Her fingers closed around Elena's uniform. And then she pulled. The fabric ripped. Elena froze. The ballroom went silent. A button rolled across the marble floor. Then another. Elena immediately crossed her arms over herself. Her eyes filled with tears. But she refused to cry. Camille looked around. She seemed pleased with the attention. Maybe now you'll remember your place. Someone in the crowd whispered, "That's enough." Another guest lowered his phone. But nobody stepped forward. Marcus Bell, the hotel's general manager, finally rushed toward them. "Miss Sterling, please." Camille turned on him. "Don't interfere." Marcus stopped. He knew exactly who Camille was. She was Julian Cross's girlfriend. And Julian's company was responsible for a massive contract with the hotel. One wrong move could cost the hotel millions. Marcus looked at Elena. He could see her humiliation. And suddenly, he realized the price of staying silent could be greater than losing any contract. "Miss Sterling," Marcus said firmly, "you need to step away from my employee." Camille stared at him. "Are you threatening me?" "No." Marcus swallowed. "I'm protecting her." For the first time, Camille's smile disappeared. Then a voice came from the entrance. "Who hurt my wife?" Every head turned. A tall man in a charcoal suit stood beneath the golden entrance arch. He wasn't surrounded by bodyguards. There were no cameras following him. No security announcement. Just a calm man with dark hair, deep blue eyes, and an expression that had suddenly become ice cold. Elena's heart stopped. Adrian. Adrian Cole walked toward her. Nobody in the room seemed to breathe. He removed his suit jacket. Without saying a word, he placed it gently around Elena's shoulders. Then he looked into her eyes. "Are you hurt?" Elena shook her head. "I'm okay." Adrian looked at the torn sleeve. "No, you're not." Then he turned toward the room. His voice remained calm. But everyone heard it. "My wife was humiliated in this ballroom." Gasps spread through the guests. Camille's face turned pale. Julian Cross stared at Adrian. Then he whispered the words everyone else was thinking. "Adrian Cole." Marcus immediately lowered his head. The billionaire founder had arrived. And the woman everyone had believed was a server was his wife. Camille stared at Elena. Then at Adrian. Then back at Elena. "You're his wife." Elena said nothing. Adrian answered for her. "Yes." Camille's confidence collapsed. "But she works here." Adrian looked at her. "She volunteers here." Silence. "She doesn't need the money." Camille's lips parted. Adrian continued. "She does this because she believes people deserve respect whether they're serving dinner or sitting at the head table." Julian slowly stepped forward. "Adrian, I had no idea." Adrian looked at him. "That is exactly the problem." Julian stopped. Adrian pointed toward Elena. "You saw what happened." Julian lowered his eyes. "I should have intervened." "Yes," Adrian replied. "That was your responsibility." Nobody spoke. Then Adrian turned toward the audience. "My wife never wanted anyone to know who she was tonight." Elena gently touched his arm. "Adrian." He looked at her. She shook her head. "Don't turn this into revenge." Adrian stared at Camille. Then back at Elena. And something in his expression softened. Adrian could have destroyed Camille's reputation in minutes. He could have called lawyers. He could have contacted every executive in the room. He could have demanded that Julian Cross cancel every business relationship connected to Camille. Instead, he asked Marcus one question. "Marcus, how much has this event raised tonight?" Marcus checked his tablet. $840,000. Adrian nodded. "Then let's make it 1 million. The room fell silent. Adrian stepped toward the auction stage. "I will personally donate the remaining $160,000. Applause slowly began. But Adrian raised his hand. On one condition. Everyone waited. The money must fund scholarships for hotel employees' children. Marcus stared at him. Elena smiled through her tears. Adrian continued. Because tonight we were reminded that the people serving the wealthy are often the people society forgets to thank. The applause became thunderous. Camille stood alone. For the first time that evening, she wasn't surrounded by attention. She was surrounded by consequences. Then Julian walked toward the microphone. And he had something to say. Julian Cross took the microphone. He looked at Elena. Then Adrian. Then the audience. My name is Julian Cross. Everyone already knew. But tonight, he wasn't introducing himself. He was admitting something. I watched someone being humiliated because I was afraid of embarrassing the person standing beside me. Camille looked at him. Julian. He raised his hand. Please. The room became silent. I was wrong. His voice cracked slightly. I told myself I was staying out of a personal argument. But that wasn't true. I was protecting my image. He turned toward Elena. Mrs. Cole, I'm sorry. Elena nodded. Thank you for saying that. Julian continued. Effective tonight, the Meridian Crown will have a new employee protection policy. No guest, regardless of wealth or influence, will be allowed to mistreat hotel staff. Marcus looked stunned. Julian then turned toward Adrian. And I'm asking you to hold me accountable. Adrian studied him for several seconds. Then he nodded. That's a better answer than an excuse. The room applauded. But Camille wasn't listening. She was staring at the floor. And for the first time, she seemed to understand what she had done. Camille finally stepped forward. Her voice was quieter now. Elena. Elena looked at her. Camille struggled to speak. I was cruel. Nobody moved. I thought because I had money, I was better than you. Elena said nothing. Camille continued. And when you didn't fight back, I thought it meant you were weak. Elena slowly shook her head. No. Camille looked confused. It meant I didn't want to become like you. Those words broke through the room. Camille's eyes filled with tears. I don't know how to fix this. Elena looked at her for a long moment. You can't undo what happened. Camille lowered her head. But you can decide what happens next. Adrian watched his wife. He knew exactly why he loved her. Not because she was beautiful. Not because she was wealthy. But because even when someone hurt her, she refused to surrender her character. Camille whispered, will you ever forgive me? Elena took a breath. Forgiveness isn't permission. Camille looked up. It means I refuse to carry your cruelty with me. For the first time that night, Camille cried. And Elena walked away. The gala should have ended there. But Adrian had one more surprise. He asked Marcus to bring a small wooden box from the hotel office. Marcus returned moments later. Adrian opened it. Inside were dozens of handwritten letters. They had been written by hotel employees over the previous 2 years. Letters thanking an anonymous donor. A dishwasher had written about his daughter's college scholarship. A housekeeper had written about medical bills that had been quietly paid. A young kitchen worker had written about receiving enough financial support to finish university. Elena had never attached her name. Adrian held up one letter. My wife has donated more than $11 million to causes connected to working families. The room became silent again. Elena looked embarrassed. Adrian, that's enough. He smiled. No. Then he turned toward the staff. Tonight they deserve to know. Marcus wiped his eyes. You did all this. Elena looked around. I only wanted people to have opportunities. A young hotel employee began applauding. Then another. Soon the entire staff was standing. The wealthy guests followed. Elena looked overwhelmed. Adrian quietly whispered. See. They aren't applauding the billionaire's wife. Elena smiled. They're applauding Elena. By midnight, the gala was over. Guests slowly disappeared through the hotel entrance. News reporters waited outside. But Elena and Adrian stayed behind. They walked through the empty ballroom together. Broken champagne glasses had been cleared. The orchestra had packed away its instruments. The chandeliers still glowed above the empty tables. Elena stopped beside the place where a uniform had been torn. Adrian noticed. "You don't have to come back here." Elena looked at him. "Yes, I do." "Why?" "Because I don't want one ugly moment to own this place." Adrian smiled. "What do you want to do?" Elena looked toward the ballroom. "I want to make sure the next person wearing that uniform feels safe." Adrian nodded. "Then we'll do it." The next morning, Adrian's foundation announced a new program. It would provide emergency financial assistance, education grants, and legal support to service workers facing workplace abuse. But Elena added one condition. No employee should have to become famous before they deserve respect. That sentence became the foundation's new motto. The following morning, Camille woke up to hundreds of messages. The video from the gala had spread across social media. But something unexpected happened. The public wasn't interested in destroying her. They were interested in what she would do next. Julian ended their professional partnership. Several brands suspended their contracts. But Adrian refused to publicly attack her. Instead, Elena sent Camille a message. It contained only one sentence. "If you truly regret what happened, use your influence to make sure it doesn't happen again." Camille read it several times. Then she made a decision. She donated her next year's appearance fees to the Hotel Employee Scholarship Fund. She also publicly apologized. Not with excuses. Not with explanations. Just an admission. "I treated someone as less human because of her uniform. I was wrong." The apology didn't erase the damage. But it was a beginning. Months later, Camille began volunteering at a community food program. She didn't post pictures. She didn't hire photographers. She simply showed up. For the first time in her life, she was doing something without expecting applause. And Elena never asked for credit. 6 months later, Elena returned to the Meridian Crown. This time, she wasn't wearing a disguise. She arrived wearing a simple navy dress. Marcus Bell greeted her at the entrance. "Welcome home." Elena smiled. "I'm glad to be back." Marcus handed her something. It was a new uniform. But this one was different. On the inside of the collar was a small embroidered message. "Every person deserves dignity." Elena touched the words. Her eyes became wet. Marcus said, "The staff chose it." Elena looked around. Servers were smiling. Kitchen workers waved. Housekeepers stood proudly nearby. Nobody was looking at her because she was Adrian Cole's wife. They were looking at her because she had stood beside them. Adrian arrived moments later. He looked at Elena. "You ready?" She smiled. "For what?" He pointed toward the ballroom. "The scholarship ceremony." Elena laughed. "I thought we were just having dinner." Adrian grinned. "You should know by now. Your husband is terrible at keeping surprises small." She laughed again. And together, they walked toward the ballroom. Inside the ballroom, hundreds of scholarship recipients and hotel workers filled the seats. Elena stepped onto the stage. She looked at the crowd. Then she looked at Adrian. She took the microphone. "I used to think hiding my identity would teach me who people really were." The audience listened. "But I learned something else." She paused. "People aren't defined by how they treat the powerful. They are defined by how they treat the powerless." The room became completely silent. Elena continued. "A person can own 10 companies and still be poor in character. A person can wash dishes, clean rooms, serve food, and still possess more dignity than someone sitting in a $1,000 chair." She looked toward the hotel staff. "Never let anyone convince you that your job determines your worth." The applause began slowly. Then it grew. Adrian stood. Marcus stood. The entire room followed. Elena smiled. She had started the night in a torn uniform. She ended it surrounded by people who finally understood the truth. Wealth could buy a ballroom. Power could buy influence. But respect had to be earned. Years later, people would still talk about the night Elena Ward's uniform was torn inside the Meridian crown. But Elena never remembered the sound of the fabric. She remembered what happened afterward. She remembered Marcus finding his courage. She remembered Julian admitting that silence can protect cruelty. She remembered Camille discovering that an apology means nothing unless behavior changes. And most of all, she remembered Adrian placing his jacket around her shoulders without asking whether she wanted revenge. Because he already knew his wife. He knew Elena didn't want power to hurt people. She wanted power to protect them. That night changed more than one woman. It changed a company. It changed a hotel. It changed a charity. And it changed hundreds of people who had watched a wealthy woman humiliate someone she believed was beneath her. The greatest twist was not that Elena was secretly married to a billionaire. The greatest twist was that she had never needed the billionaire's name to have value. She already had it. Her kindness had value. Her dignity had value. Her courage had value. And so does yours. So if you ever find yourself standing in a room where someone is being mocked because of their clothes, their job, their money, or their background, remember Elena. You don't need to be powerful to speak up. Sometimes the smallest act of courage becomes the loudest message in the room. And sometimes the person everyone overlooks is the person carrying the greatest strength. If this story meant something to you, tell us in the comments. Would you have stepped forward when Elena was being humiliated, or would you have stayed silent? And remember this. Never measure a person's worth by the uniform they wear. Because titles can disappear. Money can disappear. Beauty can disappear. But character is what remains when everything else is gone. This is Silent Empire. Where the quietest people can carry the strongest stories.